Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Scoop. I'm your host, Frank Chaparro, editor-at-large at The Block, and I am very excited for today's episode. Joining us on the other side of the mic, sitting outside. You look. I hope you don't get too cold.
I got my jacket. I'm ready.
He's got his jacket. He's ready for that northern exposure.
Oh yeah.
The gentleman you hear on the other side of the mic is Ethan Buchman, co-founder of Cosmos, CEO of Informal Systems, and president of the Interchain Foundation. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Cosmos network and ecosystem, Atom 2.0, app chains, interoperability, and a lot more. But before we dive in, I would like to take a minute to thank our sponsors. Get ready for Season 3 of the Tron Grand Hackathon 2022 with a total of $1.2 million in prizes across Web3, DeFi, GameFi, NFTs, and the newly added Academy and Ecosystem tracks. The wait is over. Tron Grand Hackathon presented by TronDAO. To learn more, visit trondao.org. This episode is also brought to you by Ledn. From Bitcoin and USDC savings accounts to Bitcoin-backed loans, Ledn's financial services enable you to benefit from your holdings today without selling your Bitcoin. Learn more about Ledn at ledn.io. Ledn, where your digital assets come to life. All opinions expressed by hosts and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and not necessarily those of the blocks. Podcast guests may have taken positions in the assets or other matters discussed in this podcast. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. For full terms, visit theblock.co/terms-service. Once again, I'd like to welcome our guest, Ethan, co-founder of Cosmos. Ethan, now it all makes sense. It's all coming together. The reason for the name being Cosmos, Atom, you are this physics wonk.
Something
it's
like that.
in
yeah.
your DNA.
Yeah.
I didn't have that background until we kind of debriefed ahead of turning on the mics. So how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. Thanks a lot for having me on. I'm always trying to understand the universe, and Cosmos is part of the general, search for truth and understanding and to reflect back, the beauty all around us. So, yeah.
How do you think Cosmos is part of our search for truth in the universe?
Computing.
Seems bold.
It's bold, yeah. I mean, I think of it as a quite grand project to, upgrade and transform institutions of political economic expression, which I see as, an extension of the emergent properties of the universe and where we are in this, spatial temporal location of the galaxy and all the magic that's happening here on Earth, and that presumably we want to preserve, figure out how to sustain at least the good stuff, and so tools of coordination are necessary to do that, especially amidst all the complexity, and that's how we think about kind of what we're up to enable really any community on the planet to have the tools to express themselves, to coordinate, to build systems that work for them. We're coming at it from one particular angle, and we're not gonna boil the ocean all at once. But it seems like the thesis that we sort of founded and put forward some 6 years ago of sovereignty and interoperability as the way forward for internet communities is really proving out, and that's what Cosmos and the Interchain thesis is really all about.
So walk us through, folks who are maybe unfamiliar with Cosmos, dissecting or stripping away some of that complexity. Give us a brief 101 introduction on Cosmos and Atom.
Yeah, sure. So, assuming people are familiar with, say, Ethereum or other kinds of, or Bitcoin or other kind of L1s, these blockchains are machines. They're computers. You can think about them as individual computers, even though technically they're made up of many computers. Mm-hmm. The thing they compute is effectively, a single thread computer, right? People talk about, like Vitalik jokes about how Ethereum's as powerful as like a calculator from 30 years ago or something like this, right? And there's been an effort to build a general purpose version of this computer. Ethereum calls itself the world computer, right? And to host, all the one size fits all kind of solution for all of the world's decentralized computing needs, something like this. And the essence of Cosmos is to kind of reject that world computer and to say, look, we believe there should be many of these blockchain computers, and that they should be tuned for particular applications, right? So that rather than having a single general purpose computer and everyone deploys their application on that, we put forth this idea of the application specific blockchain, where anyone can build their own application as a blockchain itself. And that way, communities can have more alignment on who's running their application, how it runs, on the economic environment, the political environment, and so on. So, to get concrete, rather than just deploy a smart contract on Ethereum, you would be building your own blockchain. You would deploy your application as its own blockchain with its own validator set, right? So these are using proof of stake, which is something Cosmos has played a big role in sort of bringing about and popularizing and productionizing. And this gives communities and developers and their users a kind of unprecedented control over the environment, over the infrastructure, over the applications that they're otherwise lacking when they simply deploy a smart contract on someone else's blockchain, right? And I sort of liken this to the evolution of kind of mainframe computers, from mainframe computers to personal computers, is this transition everyone is at least somewhat familiar with, even if you didn't go through it yourself. There used to be big computers in the basement of HP or Dell or whatever, and everyone they were the kind of world computers, and and people scoffed at the idea that individuals would have their own computers on their desktop. Like, why would they need that? That doesn't make any sense, right? But of course, what happened? We got
I have a few right here.
Yeah,
I have way too many computers.
We use them to connect.
A computer
right?
detailed.
Yeah.
But so there is still this underpinning infrastructure that connects these different app chains, right? The interchain security hub, I think it's referred to as, that you're still within the scope and parameters of this security network.
Yeah, so there's more to unpack there. So to finish the analogy, in the same way we went from mainframes to personal computers, but it wasn't just about everyone having their own personal computer. It was also about those computers connecting to each other over a standardized internet protocol, TCP, IP, whatever protocols we use to connect our personal computers. And so in the same way, we're building these application-specific blockchains, or enabling anyone to have them. We refer to them as community computers rather than personal computers, right? But they relate to the mainframes, like Ethereum is the kind of mainframe here, and these community computers relate to the mainframes. And so rather than do all the computation on a mainframe, you do it on your community computer in a way that it can interact with and interoperate with the other community computers, right? And so to be concrete, you have right now, say, something like 50 different Cosmos-based blockchains that are out there that are each their own application-specific blockchain doing their own thing, and they're all able to connect to each other using a standardized interoperability protocol that we call IBC, inter-blockchain communication, right? And so that allows a kind of permissionless, bottom-up, emergent topology to form between these different blockchains, these app-specific blockchains, in the same way that there was an emergent bottom-up kind of internet that formed between all these different computers, some 20, 30 years ago, and that's been growing since. And so, what Cosmos is doing is very much analogous. It's the community computer revolution and the associated interchain revolution, in the same way that we had the personal computer revolution and the internet along with it. And there are many ways to think about it can kind of be mapped. So, but it's important to understand that, for Cosmos to succeed, the core essence was enabling any community to have sovereignty, right? Which means they can structure their blockchain, their application, however they want, without paying rent to anyone.
What parameters can they change, Ethan? When you think about what each of these communities look like, how have they structured the blockchain differently?
Yeah, so many of them. So we built a framework for building blockchains, right? And we call that framework Cosmos SDK. You don't have to use it, but that's the most popular way to do things that most of the chains launch use, and that comes batteries included. So there's a lot of things you get out of the box about how governance works, about how staking works, the proof of stake system, delegation, slashing, and so on. And what most of the chains will focus on building are their own modules using the Cosmos SDK with their own business-specific logic for building, decentralized exchanges or lending protocols or carbon credits marketplaces or, social impact bonds or things like that. So it is, it's the kinds of things you might build with a smart contract on Ethereum, but building it as your own blockchain gives you, much more control on the operations of the thing and on the agents who are actually operating the thing, right? You have a dedicated validator set rather than than just some some random miners that are mining a generalized chain or validating a generalized chain. The validators of your application, they kind of really care about your application. But then you can tweak all kinds of interesting things. And because of the way we built the stack as in sort of layers, it gives application developers the option to tap into deeper and deeper components of the technology stack to tune more things about the system. So, if they want to tune something about how the mempool works, or how, block propagation works, or how block production works, or certain parameters about that, or parameters about inflation, or about, the distribution, or they want to do hard fork upgrades and, and adjust things. So they kind of have much more control over really anything. And because it's written, Cosmos application-specific blockchains tend to be written in a real world programming language like Go or now Rust. The Cosmos SDK is written in Go. It gives developers access to a much larger ecosystem of tools and developer kits and so on to actually build and test their applications. They're not confined into the world of a specialized smart contract virtual machine the way they might be on other, if they're using the EVM, or if they're using Solana or some other virtual machine like that, right?
And if you were to sort of break down how the vision for app chains for Cosmos' ecosystem differs from maybe, let's say, Avalanche, how would you break down that difference?
Yeah, so I think the crux of it is the level of sovereignty you get as a Cosmos app chain. From my understanding of the security model within Avalanche, there's a lot more sort of integration there, and sort of a larger security system you have to buy into. You do get what people are kind of realizing is there's a broader spectrum of sovereignty, right? And on sort of one end of that spectrum is the kind of one extreme is the kind of independent Cosmos app chain, right? And a lot of others are sort of exploring ways to fill in that spectrum, including within Cosmos. We're exploring ways to fill in spectrums of sovereignty and to share security and so on. So we sort of start from this bottom up foundation of, well, every community should be able to be completely sovereign over the infrastructure they put up, the blockchain they put up. And then from there, using our general purpose interoperability protocol, IBC, we can start to build solutions, distributed protocol solutions that run across these application specific blockchains to share security and do more interesting things, right? And that's when we can start to get into talking about the Cosmos Hub as one of these blockchains that's kind of offering its security to others. We can get into that. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask next.
Awesome. Yeah.
This whole thing about sovereignty makes me think about those. I don't know why it does, but you ever see those videos of those people who get pulled over by the cops, and the cops try to get their ID and their identification and whatnot, and they're like, "I am a sovereign individual. I am not a part of the state."
Uh-huh.
Have you seen any of those?
I've seen some of those. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't believe in the sovereign individual, which is probably a blasphemous thing to say, to a bunch of crypto listeners. But they should take me up on why not. Why not? Well, because individuals, I don't think the individual is like a construction of our of maybe the last few hundred years or so. It's not a real thing. We build them up in our heads. We build up these egos and symbols and images of ourselves, and imagine that the world could work based out of individuals. But individuals don't reproduce. They abstractly, we pretend they do, but they don't. Requires families, communities, etc. Right? So trying to reason in terms of individuals is almost guaranteed to lead you astray if you're trying to think about freedom in society in particular. I think you lose a lot. That's not to say individuals aren't important or we don't need to take care of them or anything like that. It's just I think the sovereign individual thesis kind of leads us away, and I'd rather think about sovereign communities, right? Because that sort of puts the community element, the relational element kind of front and center much more.
And it seems to have informed your thinking on how blockchains work. Societies, when you think about what a society should look like and how it should operate, it's not that much different than how a blockchain should operate.
Well, something like that, yeah. I mean, I think there is, I used to give this talk, I call it Brief History of Distributed State, about, drawing an analogy between, the history of kind of political organization and the history of digital network organization, and how they're kind of converging in the emergence of, let's call them, sovereign interoperable city-states. And the Cosmos technology and the interchain thesis is certainly motivated to support, bringing that about, and to be the technology that can help support the kind of new constitutional order that seems to be on the horizon that we're all kind of dancing around, about the question of the future of the nation state and the need for, better representation for citizens and for cities where, most of the populations live, and they're still kind of underrepresented in the structure. And Cosmos is trying to bring that, help bring that about, or help give tools to express that better. We have a long way to go, but, we think we're making good progress.
Definitely. So what is the Cosmos Hub, and how is it changing with Cosmos 2.0?
Yeah, so the Cosmos Hub is one among the many blockchains in the Cosmos ecosystem, in the Interchain ecosystem, right? It was sort of the progenitor, the steward. It kind of gave birth to this whole reality. And recently I was at Cosmoverse. We had a big community led conference in September in Medellin, which was incredible. I gave a talk there and had written a blog post right before about what I called the phases of Cosmos, right? And I basically proposed that September marked the transition from the first phase of Cosmos, which I called the initiation phase, to the next phase of Cosmos, which I'm calling the integration phase, right? And there's a lot involved in that transition, and the hub plays a role in that transition as well. And within the initiation phase, the Cosmos Hub was largely a prototype, right? It had to prove that this crazy new idea about how to build and deploy and operate and maintain and develop blockchains using proof of stake, using the Cosmos SDK, using IBC, interoperating like this, that all of this would work and would be possible, right? And it did that, and it did that successfully. But in doing that, in a sense, it kind of had to sacrifice itself somewhat because for the sort of the betterment of the community, in the sense that, like, it's basically seemingly the only blockchain ecosystem that didn't try to cement a single token at the heart of it that all the value would somehow accrue to, right? And that was the design. That was like the fundamental design principle, to just not do that while everyone else is doing that. Let's just not do that and do the thing that that will actually empower communities and build the most useful technology we can. And people will go on and on about security concerns and all this kind of stuff. But I don't think we have a sophisticated enough understanding of security yet, because everyone just wants to think about security in purely economic terms, in like a single number of how much it all costs to attack your blockchain, right? Well, blockchain security is political economic security. It's not just economic. There isn't a single number you can measure. And so you need to be, a lot more sophisticated about thinking about these things. And that's part of the Cosmos idea, right? And so, in that time, in the initiation phase, the hub became, it built a reputation as a sort of slow, stable kind of anchor, in this thrashing sea of innovation happening around it. It was sort of this baseline of the prototype, the sort of archetype application-specific blockchain that didn't really have any kind of fancy application. It was just the basics, right? The token transfer, the governance, IBC. It serves as an on and off ramp into the ecosystem and as sort of like a shelling point for coordination. But moving into the integration phase, that's starting to change, right? Because we completed the initiation phase. It was successful. We shipped the white paper we wrote in 2016. It's done. It's over, right? We did it. And so now it's like, okay, what's next, right? What are we up to next, right? And so thinking about the integration phase and about getting serious about preparing the Cosmos technology stack to actually have a meaningful role in upgrading, political economic expression and the, institutions in society and all this kind of stuff, we have we have a lot of work of integration to do. And so, part of what we're doing there is considering, okay, well, what is the future role for the Cosmos Hub, and how should the Cosmos Hub evolve? And we put together a proposal, a paper, sort of describing a new role for the Cosmos Hub in the integration phase to be, more actively a steward of the future of the interchain and an engine for growth for it. And to have, to prove out a new kind of governance and model of politics for governing these blockchains and these ecosystems and for moving them all forward. And so, a big part of the integration phase is this new role for the Cosmos Hub that we're working on, that was sort of, fleshed out in this paper, which just went up for a vote. So it's now on chain. The community is voting on the paper, Proposal 82. So we encourage people to vote. Hopefully the podcast gets out before the vote completes, so that's exciting. But we can get into sort of what that looks like, what the structure of the Cosmos Hub in the future looks like, and how it builds on on everything that we've been doing so far. But I just wanted to give that sort of larger framing of the kind of phases of Cosmos. We completed the first phase, the initiation phase. Now we're moving into this integration phase. Sometime in the future, maybe we'll get to our like illumination phase where we really, we go at it. In the so I encourage people to listen to my talk from Cosmoverse as well to sort of get that framing.
And so, what does the next phase look like?
So for the Cosmos Hub, to lay out what this looks like. So the Cosmos Hub is getting a major upgrade to its base, let's say, security infrastructure. And that consists of two things, two phrases that we throw around all the time. We call one interchain security, and we call the other liquid staking, right? And people are generally familiar with what liquid staking is. Obviously, it's happening on Ethereum and other places. Interchain security is, kind of more of a Cosmos approach. It's one way we're looking at, as we were talking about before, sharing security over IBC, over the interchain, right? So that the security of one chain can be shared potentially with other chains. And there's many different ways to do that. And there's a lot of designs being explored under different, conflated kind of terminology of shared security, interchain security, mesh security, all these different kinds of things. But the kind of security, the kind of change that's coming to the hub specifically will allow new blockchains to launch, new application-specific blockchains to launch that use the same validator set as the Cosmos Hub and use the same stake that already exists on the Cosmos Hub, the staked atoms that are there by validators and delegators. And that allows kind of two fundamental basic things. One is it allows the Cosmos Hub to actually extend its own functionality in a sort of modular, secure, fault-isolated way, so that it can gain new functionality within its economy without having to change its core, right? So, interchain security sort of functions as a generalized platform for building applications above the Cosmos Hub using the validator set as a Cosmos Hub in a sort of very simple way that just puts together all the pieces we already have of Tendermint and IBC and Cosmos SDK and so on to allow you to build chains that inherit this security so that you can extend the functionality of the hub. But it also allows new chains to launch that don't just want to be extending the functionality of the hub. They want to just be, their own application-specific chain in their own way. They want to bootstrap using security of the hub, but maybe they'll want to spin out one day and we'll give them that option too, and they'll become their own sovereign chain in their own right, or they want to continue with it operating within the hub sort of economic zone. So it's kind of a new platform for extending functionality and for new chains to launch, leveraging the security of the hub, right? And so this, for the first time, opens the door to a sort of more active development environment and development velocity in and around the Cosmos Hub. Whereas in the past, and throughout much of the initiation phase, the Cosmos Hub was very slow to evolve. There was a lot of resistance to putting new functionality directly on the Cosmos Hub. It's supposed to be a sort of conservative anchor, like I was saying, an anchor in a thrashing sea. You want it to be sort of reliable and trusted, and not really high security environment, which means you don't want to try out too many crazy things all at once, or have a sort of higher the higher development velocity you might expect in certain other application-specific blockchains sort of in the ecosystem. And so having interchain security allows the hub to kind of have its cake and eat it too, in a sense, in that it can retain that sort of secure core center, but expand its functionality and its ability to interface with others in a more controlled way, where if something happens there, it doesn't affect the core. You get the sort of fault isolation that Cosmos is really known for. And so then above this base, so we have that. We also have liquid staking is coming, because basically liquid staking is like inevitable. Everyone's just you just do it, so it's sort of a reality you have to wrestle with, and we have a particular approach to thinking about it. A number of projects are building, using interchain security, liquid staking solutions, right? For instance, different liquid staking solutions. But essentially what we propose in the paper, so there's this new secure foundation with interchain security and liquid staking. And then the idea is that we can build a growth engine on top of that, using, services built on interchain secured chains that extend the functionality of the hub. But we can then build hub-specific applications that will extend and service the growing number of IBC-enabled chains, right? So we propose specifically an application called the Allocator to help expand the number of chains, and one called the Scheduler, which services them and specifically focuses on cross-chain ordering guarantees and MEV and mitigating all this kind of stuff, and providing more services there that service basically the growing ecosystem, right? And so that's where a lot of the excitement has been about the new hub specific applications that are being proposed to be built. And then, the last thing that the paper kind of proposes is that, okay, well, now to manage all this and to organize all this, we're going to need additional sort of governance and, political organizational structuring, to make good decisions and to move this all forward, and additional treasury resources to kind of fund it and help it succeed. And so that's kind of what's proposed in the paper, and as a sort of overall holistic direction to go in. And then there's months and years of development ahead to actually flesh out details and help the whole ecosystem grow.
Get ready for Season 3 of the Tron Grand Hackathon 2022. There are a total of $1.2 million in prizes up for grabs in Web3, DeFi, GameFi, NFTs, and the newly added Academy and Ecosystem tracks. So what are you waiting for? Join Tron for an opportunity to showcase your work, win funding for your project, and network with other builders in the community. Tron Grand Hackathon, presented by TronDAO. To learn more, visit trondao.org. I also want to give a shout out to Ledn. Ledn, Bitcoin-backed loans and savings by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. As we've seen, not all digital asset lenders are created equal. Ledn prioritizes safeguarding clients' assets with its robust risk management approach. That is why Ledn doesn't actively trade or invest in DeFi yield generation strategies with its clients' assets, and only supports Bitcoin and USDC, two of the highest quality and most liquid assets in the industry. Ledn is also dedicated to transparency, which is why they are the first digital asset lending company to complete a proof of reserves attestation. Learn more about Ledn at ledn.io. Ledn, where your digital assets come to life. We often talk about blockchains being their own cities, in a sense. We've had a few venture capitalist investors come on the show and use that metaphor. When do you think cities will be on blockchains?
That's a great question. I love the idea of, I kind of mentioned that. That's kind of what I think we're building towards with Cosmos. And, I think municipal sovereignty is going to be a big problem for the 21st century, and something we'll have to wrestle with. And the goal, at least, is for the technologies we're building to support that. I think there's a long way to go, and we're seeing some cities and different places start to experiment a little bit in various ways. Probably it's going to need to, we're going to need to start with smaller cities where kind of the problems are more manageable, or aspects of municipal administration that, might be easier to kind of, parcel out to work with this. But I don't know. It's gonna take time. I think we also need to mature the systems more, and we need to start talking to city governments more actively about how we can help them, how we can empower them and their citizenry.
Have you talked with anyone who's an expert in terms of political governance, political science, about what that could look like?
It depends on how you evaluate, that kind of expertise. I think, we've certainly talked to people who are familiar or have experience with it. There are certain conversations going with folks in governments in different places. We're not actively currently pursuing a, municipal project. The way we're thinking about it is actually, is trying to go through smaller or associations of businesses and trying to support kind of local economies more directly, right? And this gets into some of the what we call collaborative finance, which is an approach we have to trying to use blockchain technology and Cosmos technology to actually support the real economy by working with groups or associations of businesses to support sort of local economic trade and to reduce the pains involved in sort of managing cash flow or managing relations in a way that blockchain, specifically their kind of monetary functions and abilities, can actually help. And so that's something we're really actively starting to explore, and we're planning to go into production with a small community in the UK early next year, and sort of try to build up from there on actually using these solutions. But this is very different from the way I think DeFi and most people think about decentralized finance and blockchains as money and all that. There's something interesting there, but we're kind of taking a different approach to zoom in on the sort of liquidity pains that face small and medium sized businesses, which are like the backbones of local economies, and how we can use this kind of coordination technology to support them. So I'd love to dive into more of that, more how that works specifically, but we can also come back to it.
One of my biggest pet peeves is when folks are in the kitchen while I'm cooking. It gets me it antagonizes my soul in a sense. But it makes me think of the expression, too many cooks in the kitchen is a bad thing. So that's my defense whenever I maybe pop off at someone who's hovering over me in the kitchen. When it comes to governance in general, just broadly, decision making, whether it's at a government level or a corporate level, how do you think about the drawbacks of a more decentralized mechanism of decision making? Yeah. Are there certain problems, certain decisions, whether they're a government or corporate decision, that are better left to be made to one individual or a few individuals rather than a decentralized community?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of complexity here, and there's not a single answer. At the end of the day, it's a question of how we orient towards accountability, right? Mm-hmm. And so there are different arrangements. If you elect a dictator, but they're accountable to be to be vetoed or thrown out by the community, then that, you could call that effective decentralized governance, even though all decisions are made by the individual, except for the decision to let the individual, make all the decisions, right?
That would be an interesting form of government.
Yeah. So I think that exists in some places, but so people have this, especially in DAOs and these communities, you always see this like resistance to CEOs and to their being leaders, and I think all of that stems from insufficiently sophisticated understanding of organizations and what organizations are made out of, and what we try to think about. I'm CEO of Informal Systems. We're structured as a workers cooperative. And we pay a lot of attention, and put a lot of intention into how we structure our work, how we talk about our work, what accountability is. And we've actually been developing a language, we call it workflow, to talk about the cycles of promise making and redemption. And one way, for instance, to understand what a CEO is doing and why they should be able to make certain decisions is that they're the person in the organization making the broadest scope and the longest term promises, right? And everyone in the organization is making promises of different scopes and different time horizons, and you need a language to actually talk about that, to even begin to think about good governance, right? So just thinking about governance in terms of like, oh, we're going to have some structure, and these people will make these decisions then, and this is how the representation works, and all this kind of stuff. It's a little bit besides the point, because lots of different kinds of systems like that can work. What kind of matters most is the culture and language that's used in the actual processes of governance, and that's the thing you have to kind of nurture, and you can't just build a tool or build like a single smart contract and now you'll have good governance. I mean, it doesn't work like that. It's an active kind of bubbling cultural process. And we have found that something that often inhibits it is effective language for talking about the stages of promise making and redemption, and being able to differentiate, are you exploring making an offer? Are you actually making an offer? Like, did you make a promise to deliver on something? Where are you in execution? And then to be able to assess and to constantly go through that loop of, exploration, negotiation, execution, and assessment. That's what accountability is all about. So for us, at least, it's about, servicing that language and using it and kind of building those muscles. And it's less about the particular, mechanics of the kind of governance rules, let's say, that are encoded in your smart contract or your DAO, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Even in these decentralized systems, we have these so-called protocol politicians rise up and become the zeitgeist or the face, the power behind these broader decentralized systems. Are protocol politicians a net negative for these types of systems, or?
I mean, look, humans are political animals, so politics is inherent and natural and native, and we should all culture and nurture good politics, right? I mean, good discussions, good conversations where where people are heard, and power is inevitably going to be a part of that as well. And the more you're able to talk about the power and where it lies and how it's structured, kind of the better, right? And these are all things we're all trying to improve on. Certainly none of it is perfect. It can all be improved. I mean, I think it feels like we're lacking the language and and practice of it, and the tradition of building companies and building governments has been so far from where it needs to be in terms of the maturity here, that and so the blockchain space is sort of showing up and saying, okay, well, we'll do it. And on the one hand, it's naive, because it's like, well, you're just going to ignore a few thousand years of human political economic evolution and start from scratch. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, what else are you going to do? So you kind of try to balance both and look, okay, read about a few thousand years of history and then try to understand where you are and try to be humble and take the political animal in all of us kind of seriously. Is I think an interesting challenge ahead, and partially where Cosmos is trying to position itself as like, hey, we allow more politics to be expressed, right? Like actually formalize rules and don't just let the sort of implicit power structures dominate. You get tyranny of the structurelessness and all this kind of thing. So that's at least part of the goal, and we're hoping to be able to help mature how we talk about and do governance and accountability kind of in general. And
did you get too cold, Ethan?
My computer was going to die, so I had to step inside. Yeah.
So maybe walk us through then this idea of collaborative finance as opposed to decentralized finance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe I should just say, just to plug all the stuff I'm talking about accountability and workflow. We put up a guide, workflow.informal.systems, where we wrote out in detail sort of how we work and organize and talk about promise making. And so I encourage folks to check that out. That's workflow.informal.systems. On the Ko-Fi front, the collaborative finance, it's interesting because all this stuff about promise making is everywhere, right? And money is a system of promises. And money, monetary institutions are for managing those promises, and we need to think about what those promises are. And so our approach with collaborative finance is to actually look at the structure of the promises as they exist in the world, which are all the credit that is out there that businesses enter into on a regular basis when they ship goods and write an invoice, and then someone owes them money because they shipped goods, right? And so you might have the experience of going to the store and putting $5 down on the table, and then you get your pack of whatever right away. But a huge amount of trade, perhaps most of it, is actually conducted on credit, even unsecured credit, where where payment is due in 30 days or 60 days or 90 days or whatever the case may be, right? And so we want to actually look at the structure of promises and credit in the trade economy, in the real economy, and see what can be done there. And what's interesting is, we have this conception of money as liquidity, and everyone in DeFi is obsessed with like making liquidity available. Everyone wants to be a liquidity provider and, come up with, all these AMMs and all these solutions. It's all about liquidity. But that's a fundamental misunderstanding. It represents a fundamental misunderstanding of what money is supposed to be for. You don't want to create liquidity. You want to save it, right? You want to save businesses liquidity. The fact that we need all this liquidity sort of sloshing around out there is an issue. It's a problem. It's a problem that we need to address. And so the idea with Ko-Fi is to look at the structure of liquidity in the real economy, to look at the existing graph of payment obligations, the graph of invoices, if you will. Take all the invoices and look at them and look for patterns in the graph, because what you can do is you actually discover that there are cycles in the graph, right? Where I owe you and you owe Steven and Steven owes me. And anywhere there's a cycle in the real world, in the payments graph, it can be cleared, it can be netted out or set off without any liquidity. We can all save on our cash flow liquidity requirements by just discovering that there's a cycle there, right? And these cycles exist all throughout the economy. They can make up something like 10% even of the outstanding trade credit debt in a sort of developed economy. And so, our team has been doing the research and development to build solutions to actually enable businesses to benefit from the existence of these cycles, right? And so from the perspective of a business, what's essentially happening is they're able to pay off their accounts payable with their accounts receivable, right? They can pay their liabilities with their with their assets without having to first convert into cash, having to collect first, right? And this can have huge benefits to small business communities by saving them the pain of paying their bills, because the total amount of invoices that they're owed and that they owe can just be reduced by finding all the cycles in the economy and offsetting them. And nobody is looking for these cycles. They're out there, and no one really wants to find them. It's kind of hard. You have to collect all the invoices and stuff, but that's the challenge ahead of us. And so we're trying to focus everyone, with thinking about, the future of finance and sustainable finance and what that looks like. Look at the actual structure of unsecured trade credit in the world that is the foundation of so much of the trade economy and of commerce, and find ways to actually save liquidity there to the benefit of all those small businesses, right? Because liquidity is the thing that kills small businesses most, right? It's not it's one of the number one reasons they go out of business is not because they're insolvent, it's because they couldn't pay their bills because they couldn't collect, right? And so focusing on liquidity saving mechanisms can actually play a huge role in benefiting small businesses and in laying a new foundation for how to think about the existence of liquidity and the need to create, token forms of money that can actually circulate, right? So CoFi is an attempt to sort of refocus us from this problem of liquidity provisioning that the world of DeFi is kind of obsessed with, towards this problem of liquidity saving, and of looking at the actual structure of the payments graph, the actual flows, and tuning to that and supporting that and encouraging the growth of new cycles, because that's what sustainable economics really looks like, is these cycles, and so you have to tune to them.
And so what does that look like in a specific app, this liquidity saving?
Yeah, well, you can imagine, the sort of simplest version of this is you're a business, you sign up, you upload your invoices to the thing. And at the end of every month, everyone gets their invoices back, and they're all just magically somewhat lower. Everyone's invoices are just reduced somewhat, right? And so now you pay off whatever the amount left over is, right? And so so net liquidity can sort of be saved in this way, right? You could also imagine that this would work for people that are already collecting invoices, right? So you don't have to work with the individual businesses or so on. But so for instance, the system that we're going live with a project called Local Loops in the UK.
I just want Expensify to be quicker.
Yeah.
Why does it have to take 30 days for me to get my upgraded premium economy flight receipt refunded?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's outrageous.
I don't know if I can help with that. But
they should build. Yeah. They should build something. They should build a Expensify killer on Cosmos.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah. So there's a lot of potential here to save liquidity in the real economy and to change the way we think about the creation of money. And I've said for a long time that money is the killer app of blockchains, but we're still so far from the existing blockchain currencies playing sort of more meaningful monetary roles and actually filling all of the properties of money. I'm working on a blog post series about the properties of money and sort of the role of cryptocurrencies in them, and and sort of trying to locate where cryptocurrencies are actually meaningfully doing something, and where they're not, and sort of what is ahead to actually upgrade and transform and improve the institutions of money. And so this liquidity saving idea, I think, is quite fundamental to that, because it really gets to the core of the issues with the monetary system, the need or addiction for additional liquidity that is just so unsustainable, that ignores the fact that the payments graph is imbalanced, and it's something we actually need to balance and encourage balance in. And so shifting the focus towards that, that balancing problem is really important, and also sort of relates to, problems with, sustainable systems more generally. We going back to like the sort of physics stuff. Sustainable systems are systems with sustainable flows of energy, where energy can flow in loops. And it sort of outlines a new way to think about what sustainable growth is. Everyone sort of knows, the kind of growth patterns of modern economics are just like exponential forever. It's obviously unsustainable. It's going to destroy the planet and so on. And so, do we need degrowth? Do we need some other thing? Like, what's it, is technology just going to save us? Like, what's it all about? And so the CoFi approach actually provides a different way to think about what growth is and how growth can be sustainable by focusing on these closed flowing loops. And so I think that's,
as opposed to sort of big shocks and then growth.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Big shocks.
As opposed to thinking that the central bank can just print a bunch of money and that's going to it's not even real money. They can just expand their balance sheet and then somehow magically the economy is going to rebound, or, so I think central banks are kind of coming to terms with the fact that, hey, QE, quantitative easing, it didn't work, it doesn't work. It's kind of a blunt hammer. We need to actually look at the structure of liquidity in the economy, and what we're proposing with this Ko-Fi stuff, might actually be a viable solution there. So there's a paper there that folks from our team published a year and a half ago about liquidity saving through obligation clearing. So maybe we can share that in the show notes as well. But yeah.
Well, Jerome Powell, if you're listening, there you go. There's your solution.
Exactly. Help small businesses save liquidity, man. Yeah.
Come on, Jay. So thinking about different types of apps that you're excited about, what kind of apps are you excited about?
Yeah, I mean, the things I'm most excited about are these liquidity saving systems and mutual credit systems and local currency systems that actually work with real small businesses and aren't just about trying to pump the value of a token, but are really actually trying to help people in the real world. I think we could use more of that.
What are the name of some of those?
Yeah, so we're building one at Informal Systems under this collaborative finance thing. There's a project in Kenya called Grassroots Economics that is really interesting. That's been building a mutual credit system there for many years called Sarafu. There's the Circles UBI system in based out of Berlin that's growing. So there's a few of them out there. I think we could use a lot more. That's not to say I'm not also interested in a lot of these other systems being built. I mean, I'm especially interested in ones that are kind of pushing the boundary on kind of privacy technology or scaling technology. So systems like Anoma and Penumbra, which are being built in the Cosmos ecosystem, are really exploring new privacy primitives and are able to do so using the kind of application specific blockchain philosophy that Cosmos espouses, but they're building their whole application from scratch. So I really like things that are kind of pushing the technical boundary or are really really helping local communities and there's a growing effort of like refi too, regenerative finance, right? And some things that are actually trying to address the sustainability crisis in the environment. We've got a sort of flagship project in the Cosmos community is the Regen Network that's been kind of working on this for years and building carbon credit marketplace and other kind of ways to incentivize ecological regeneration, things like that. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on whether osmosis could play a similar role to Cosmos Hub in capturing value?
Yeah. So, I mean, osmosis is an amazing application in Cosmos. I think they're also pushing the boundary, at least on UX and on certain, technical things as well. And they're a huge contributor to the core. They've obviously, they play a role as a kind of hub in the emergent, IBC topology. And I think, there's certainly a role for them to do that. Like the idea of Cosmos was always that there would be many hubs, right? Not just one. The whole point is that there isn't just one, right? Hubs will emerge kind of organically, and they'll emerge for different reasons, right? And the one we call the Cosmos Hub, okay, maybe it's a bit misleading to call it the hub because there could be many hubs, but that's just sort of the nomenclature. Is just one and has a particular role, and osmosis is can be another and has another role, and there will likely be others. I mean, ideally, Ethereum will one day be a hub in the interchain. It'll adopt IBC, and it'll play nice with everyone. So we're looking forward to there being many hubs, and the Cosmos Hub being one among the many that that carves out its own niche of being a sort of long-term anchor of trying to support the growth and expansion of the whole ecosystem, of being a highly trusted source of security that is made available, and of sort of ordering guarantees across other chains and so on. So yeah.
Ethan, I'm told you're a rapper.
Yeah. Well,
is this?
Yeah.
Can we confirm this on the show?
Yeah. So there's a rapper named Tanuki who looks identically like me, and Ethan and Tanuki have never been in the same room at the same time. And they seem to follow each other around a little bit. So
this is your alter ego?
Yeah, that's right.
Everyone needs a good one.
Yeah. So I do like, crypto nerdcore rap about, I take like classic G-Funk songs and Eminem and Dr. Dre and Tupac and Biggie and stuff. And I rap about crypto. I adjust the lyrics, to be about Bitcoin or Cosmos or, whatever. Yeah, it's a good time.
Tanuki. What does that? Where does that derive?
A tanuki is a Japanese raccoon dog with giant testicles. It's a mythical creature in sort of Japanese lore, And there's a book which I'm quite fond of. I'm fond of the author Tom Robbins. He's got this book Villa Incognito where there's a tanuki that plays a fun role and starts by floating to Earth using his scrotum as a parachute. And for some reason that kind of stuck with me.
That really resonated with you. Understood. Well, next time you have a special performance in the Cosmoverse, let me know and I'll
awesome.
I'll be there. I will be there. Awesome. Ethan, anything else you want to touch on before I free you to your drive that you have, your long drive back into the
into the city,
into the city,
the one and only city. No, I guess the highlights just the plug. So workflow.informal.systems. I encourage folks to check that out if they care about governance and accountability and better language for that. Collaborative finance. Stay tuned. We'll be putting out more content about that, but you can check out the papers that sort of lay this out and the power of it for thinking new ways to think about money. Our company, Informal Systems, we're a workers cooperative. We're core developer in Cosmos, building a lot of the stuff for the Cosmos Hub that we talked about, and interchain security and things like this. And then obviously Cosmos itself. So a lot of exciting things happening. We're going into this integration phase, and we have a lot of exciting work ahead of us. New Cosmos Hub, new ways to do governance, and new ways to relate to the real world. So we're very excited.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It was great chatting. Yeah.
The Scoop will be back for you again with another great guest. Have an awesome day. Looking for more great insights from The Block? Check out The Block Research, the premier platform for research content on crypto markets and the digital asset industry. The Block Research membership includes cutting-edge reports, webinars, company maps, and more, available via our dedicated research portal. Visit theblockresearch.com to find out how to join today, or contact a member of our sales team at sales@theblockcrypto.com and let them know that Frank sent you.